in partnership with our Greek partner Dynamic Vision as part of the Interreg Med Green Cross Community Project. This webinar is part of a series of monthly meetings that we have started 1 year ago to share good practices among business and investment support organizations across the Mediterranean countries, North and South, on how they are dealing with the pandemic and how they are preparing for the recovery and size the economies that are arising from this crisis. So every month, and give perspective for the future. So today will be about developing investment in green economy, which is a major challenge for all our countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea. What are the opportunities for countries to develop or attract companies in this domain? What are the strategies implemented? What are the financing opportunities for companies in the green economy? We would like to thank you, all the participants, for being with us today, and obviously thank our distinguished speakers the invitation to share their views today. I would like to give you first some information. I will share my screen. So first you have to know that with this webinar is translated in French and in English, so you can use a simultaneous translation. Second, it is broadcasted live on Facebook from our partner Dynamic Vision Untitled Chapter platform, and you can also have it also in English, and you can have it broadcasted in French on the ANIMA Facebook Live. It is recorded, so you can review and share it with colleagues and friends after the event. And obviously, you will be able to interact with the speakers during the presentation, after the presentation. The chat. So we start today with which is policy and community lead for trade and investment at the World Economic Forum. He will present global trends, the economic opportunities that are arising in the green economy, which is a very good basis for starting our discussion today. We're also lucky to have the acting CEO of the Moroccan Investment and Export Development Agency, Mr. Boudra, who will present how Morocco has developed strategies and is preparing itself to develop these sectors. After each presentation shows to interact with the presenters through and at the end of these two keynotes, we make a 5-minute breaks before that will be following the two keynotes. Now to have with us Mr. George, which is a principal advisor to the Prime Minister of Greece for energy, climate, environment, and circular economy, and honorary director at the European Commission, mandated by the Director General for Environment and Circular Economy and Insularity. He will moderate the debate, for which, with our partner Dynamic Vision, we invited experts in the topic from France, Greece, Italy, Morocco, and Spain. So very interesting perspective as well for the future. I also would like to inform you that if you would like to implement strategies in this domain, if you want to translate the inspiration given by the speakers in your organizations, in your countries, on the topic of the day. For example, if you want to continue to exchange with Mr. Boudra or with one of our panelists, ANIMA offers a peer learning support in the framework of a European project called EPSOMED, which can subsidize short trainings between organizations to share expertise among two organizations or to prepare joint projects. So you can contact us at ANIMA. I'm with my colleague Manon Spina, who will give you in the chat box the contact details if you want to apply for this peer learning program. Finally, you can review all the presentation we've made during this 1 year of webinar series on the ANIMA website. In the menu, you have a section called Good Practices. It's also available in French, and all the videos are subtitles in French and English, so it will be easy for you to access all this content. So that's it for now. Let's start with our session. I would like first to introduce Mercé Boy-Roura, who is the Interreg Med coordinator for the Green Growth project. She will give us a short introduction on the green growth community before we have the keynote presentation. Merci, you are with us. Hello.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
I will let you share your screen, and so you can start with the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Emmanuel, for the presentation. I will just briefly introduce you the Interreg Med Green Growth Community, what it is and what we are doing. So basically, we are a community, a network of 14 projects that connect 165 partners from 13 countries in the Euro-Mediterranean region. We mainly act on 4 focus areas, which are food systems, smart cities, waste management, and eco-innovation, with the aim to promote green and circular economy and enhancing cross-sectoral innovation practices through an integrated and territorial-based cooperation approach. We are funded by the Interreg Med program, which is a territorial and cooperation program in the Mediterranean. What we do as a community is to support our projects in terms of communication and capitalization in order to increase their impact both at policy and market levels. So our main goals is to support a more innovative and environmentally friendly business sector by transferring knowledge through different activities, such as this Green Growth Matinee, but also through business forums, workshops, etc. And we also mainstream the term green and circular economy into different strategies and policies, different territorial levels at the Mediterranean and European. For doing so, we participate in several forums and working groups at all these levels. And our ultimate goal is to promote, activate, and support the implementation of a green and circular economy in the Mediterranean region. We encourage you to check our capitalization platform, where you can get access to a catalog of results that we recently published about the main tools and methodologies that could be transferred to different businesses and also to different cities, for instance, to promote this type of initiative. This project has been labeled by the Union for the Mediterranean in 2019, which is the Union of the Mediterranean. The ones that you don't know, it's an intergovernmental organization of 42 states from the European and Mediterranean region. What support this transition to a green and circular economy in the Mediterranean region and to benefit its citizens. The Union for the Mediterranean has been developing during the past months the 2030 Greener Med agenda, which creates a political and operational convergence to tackle key environmental issues that require cooperation among countries and different sectors. And this is essential to address environmental degradation and climate change. The agenda sets the framework to coordinate, streamline, and promote efforts in the Mediterranean region in 3 primary axes of work that you can see on the right side. Our project directly supports the axis 1, which is to support the transition towards a green, circular, and socially inclusive economy. This agenda will be officially presented at the next ministerial conference on climate and environment that will take place later on this year. And we are very happy to acknowledge the recognition and the support of the Union for the Mediterranean in our project activities. And we really thank them for this task. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Merci, for this, this presentation. So let's now enter into the discussions and the presentations. You know that 188 countries, as well as the European Union, have ratified the Paris Agreement to fight global warming. In doing so, they have commitments to reduce greenhouse gases, to develop new sectors that contribute to climate change. So that's what. So we all have obligations in these sectors, in these domains relative to climate change. And this webinar aims to share and inform participants about what are the major trends in these sectors that will contribute to fight against climate change? What are the opportunities for the development in the Mediterranean countries? And we also try to present some measures, some strategies that are implemented to mobilize private sector investment to achieve this. And obviously, after, we have this debate on financial resources in the field of green economy organized by our partner Dynamic Vision. So first, I'd like to welcome Matthew Stephenson for the World Economic Forum. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Emmanuel.
Show your
Bonjour
face.
tout le monde. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. So we will display a short video with your presentation so that we make it with a video so that it's subtitled, so our French participant, our French-speaking participant can take the full benefit of your presentation. And then we have a short exchange with you at the end of the presentation if there are some questions from the participants or myself. So thank you, Matthew. Let's watch the video and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today on investment and green growth. My name is Matthew Stephenson, and I lead the Global Investment Policy and Practice Initiative at the World Economic Forum. It is a pleasure to share what we have learned regarding innovative, sustainable investment policies and measures, and to discuss how we can use these to kickstart a green and resilient recovery. My presentation is structured in 3 parts. First, asking and suggesting an answer to the elliptical question, what is sustainable investment? Second, once we know what it is, asking the question, what can governments do to support sustainable investment? Third, how can we move from strategy to implementation, from talk to action? First, what is sustainable investment? Today, I'll use the term sustainable rather than green as a broad term to capture environmental and climate goals. Sustainable can be seen as broader than just green, for instance, by including labor practices or gender inclusion. But for the purposes of today's discussion on green growth, I'll be referring to environmental sustainability. Is sustainable investment in certain sectors? For instance, energy, transport, water, agriculture, or especially related infrastructure? Investment in infrastructure is often seen as a key to green growth, given that infrastructure decisions today have repercussions for the duration of the infrastructure's lifespan and an especially large effect on climate change. Or perhaps sustainable investment is investment that doesn't necessarily fall within a specific sector, but contributes to green growth, whether carbon transition, adaptation, or mitigation. For instance, investment in a bank that provides green bonds would qualify in this case as sustainable investment. Or still another possibility is that sustainable investment is investment that follows certain guidelines or principles, while at the same time helping contribute to sustainable development. Sustainable investment, I would say, can be all of the above. However, I would argue that sustainable investment can be in any sector, or in other words, is sector agnostic. What is important is that such investment follows certain guidelines or principles and contribute to green goals. So what can governments do to support sustainable investment? This is what we have come to talk about today. And here I would like to first provide a framework with examples of specific tools or measures, and then talk about some of the key measures in more detail. A sustainable investment framework can help align efforts among different actors. In other words, policymakers and firms need a clear picture of the different channels to pursue sustainable investment and the different tools at their disposal before those channels and tools can be effectively implemented. We have developed a framework that sees sustainable investment as comprising 5 complementary and mutually reinforcing dimensions. Sustainable investment policies are key to creating the underlying framework for investment to take place in alignment with environmental principles. An example of a tool are standards and guidelines, and integrating these in domestic and international frameworks. You can see sustainable investment policies on the top left. Then moving to the right, sustainable finance mobilization entails increasing the flow of sustainable capital to certain activities. This requires stakeholders have the information regarding sustainable behavior of different firms. In this way, policymakers, regulators, investors, media, civil society, and other actors can reward sustainable behavior and condemn unsustainable behavior, which aligns market mechanisms with development goals. An example of a tool here is environmental reporting by firms. Moving along, sustainable investment promotion can drive sustainable investment by, for instance, targeting investors in sectors that are particularly conducive to green growth, targeting investors with a sustainability mission, or creating a pipeline of sustainable bankable projects. Here, in sustainable investment promotion, an example of a tool are investment incentives made conditional on the sustainability behavior of firms, or in other words, behavioral incentives. And then moving to sustainable investment facilitation. Sustainable investment facilitation can drive sustainable investment by providing greater facilitation services and support to investment that is aligned with sustainability goals. An example of a tool here is the use of guarantees or insurance to support and protect sustainable investment. Finally, sustainable development impact involves measures to maximize the sustainability impact from investment. This can take place through indicators to monitor and measure impact, coupled with stakeholder engagement. An example of a tool is the use of environmental impact assessments to evaluate projects and ensure they align with environmental principles that we talked about in the beginning. Another tool is the use of supplier development programs to forge linkages between foreign and domestic firms. And here you can see those example tools aligned with the sustainable investment framework in the different dimensions. But what is important to realize is that all of these tools can be designed and implemented to achieve sustainability goals. How? And here's where we go into a little more detail. First, policymakers may wish to include standards and guidelines, for instance, from the OECD, in domestic frameworks and international investment agreements. Economies have started to do so in domestic frameworks already. But what is new is that these standards are increasingly being included in international investment agreements. By doing so, it will help ensure that investment follows these standards and guidelines. Second, reporting. Policymakers can encourage the adoption of sustainability reporting requirements for firms above a certain size. Reporting, as we mentioned, is essential for stakeholders to allocate capital to societal values, with firms that score well being rewarded with greater investment. Third, align incentives with sustainability behavior of firms. Governments can either make incentives conditional on sustainability behavior, one could call this a form of stick, or provide additional incentives to firms that make more of a contribution to sustainable development, a form of carrot, in the traditional stick and carrot dichotomy. Fourth, provide guarantees or insurance for sustainable investments, or consider providing additional support to firms that invest sustainably beyond only providing investment incentives. Everyone always focuses on investment incentives, but there are many other measures that can provide support to sustainable decisions and activities. For instance, to provide some examples of other types of measures beyond incentives, this can include faster regulatory approvals, or targeted aftercare services, or public recognition. Fifth, adopt a number of practical steps to create linkages between foreign firms and local firms. These can focus on linkages between firms that operate in the green economy. Specific tools can include databases or supplier development programs. For instance, by including in databases which firms operate sustainably. These are called supplier databases with sustainability dimensions, and some economies are starting to roll these out, such as in Cambodia. Or helping develop suppliers have the capacity to operate sustainably through capacity development programs and supplier development programs, and thus be listed in the database as operating in a green way. Now you might say to me, Matthew, in the current context of FDI falling about 40% due to the pandemic, this is not the right time to include additional measures to encourage sustainable behavior that might slow or even hamper these flows. Let's wait until FDI is back up and running before considering these new measures. I would suggest it would be a mistake to think this way for two reasons. First, these measures can improve the investment climate and thus can support an increase in the level of investment, especially over the long term. Consumers want to know their firms are following international standards and guidelines with respect to the environment. They increasingly reward such behavior with greater consumption of goods and services by such firms. Firms would be happy to have the option of additional incentives for additional sustainability operations. And firms thirst for linking with qualified domestic suppliers, including those that operate sustainably, as one of the most important criteria in selecting a market in which to invest. Second, this is an opportunity to reshape the system. It's when the factory line has stopped, when investment is down, that you can change the belts and bolts and reset it. Once it's going again, it will be more difficult. So this is an opportunity to change the bolts to those made of a stronger material, or in other words, adopt investment measures that will make more of a contribution to sustainability and sustainable development. So how can we move from strategy to implementation, from talk to action? Together with a number of partners, the World Economic Forum is working to stand up a new public-private alliance to increase sustainable investment flows. The Alliance to Enable Action on Sustainable Investment, or EASY, will aim to grow sustainable investment flows through both national and regional projects that systematically identify and address bottlenecks through public-private expert collaboration. I like to say that the EASY Alliance aims to make investment easy. The EASY Alliance will leverage an expected WTO agreement on investment facilitation for development that is currently being negotiated at the WTO. And this is modeled on the successful Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, also a public-private alliance, which has pioneered this approach to help implement and benefit from the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. The Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation has projects in over a dozen countries around the world and is scaling rapidly in all regions, and the Global Alliance on Sustainable Investment can do the same over time. These kinds of projects can make a difference by specifically seeing what is holding back sustainable investment flows and then taking targeted intervention to address those bottlenecks. We are currently discussing with governments, firms, international organizations, experts, and others on how best to stand up the EASY Alliance, how to make it most useful to move from strategy to implementation. And we are looking forward to working with key actors across the Mediterranean region on this new effort. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I look forward to exchanging on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for this presentation. I remind you that you can raise your question to Matthew Stephenson on the chat box. So very interesting, and we are glad to see that the World Economic Forum has made this switch to the green growth over the last years, and that you are really pushing the large community and policymakers to move on with this topic and with such alliance like EASY. What you are mentioning, Matthew, the policy standards, the capacity to evaluate, to assess investment, to incentive them, etc. Isn't it a game for big players? What I mean is, obviously for major investment that worth hundreds million euros, obviously a government, an agency like a Moroccan agency for promotion investment, they can obviously mobilize means to make the assessments, to accompany, to facilitate, to give services. But what about smaller projects? Do you think it's feasible for a government to act also for SMEs and to improve SMEs in this domain? Do you have reflection on this at the World Economic Forum?
Thank you, Emmanuel, for the question. And before I answer, let me just say what a pleasure it is to be here today, how impressed I've been with the organizing. We organize many things with the World Economic Forum. The ANIMA Network's organizing of this event has been very smooth, so congratulations. And I'm very pleased and honored to share the floor with you, Emmanuel, and with Mr. Boudra. I think my team hasn't done enough in the Mediterranean, I think, for whatever reason. So it's great to be developing these relationships, and I hope we can continue to talk after this and whatever.
Pleasure.
So to answer your question, the World Economic Forum is known for having as its members many very big companies. And we talk to them, work with them, understand their needs, interests, strategies, concerns, and so forth. At the same time, when I started this job, I realized when we did projects on the ground, it was actually the SMEs that we needed to talk to a lot to understand what was the limiting factor, what were the problems, what were the challenges, because they felt the pain. It's the SME that feels the pain of the regulation, and it's the SME that needs the support, the helping hand, because they don't have the people and the time and the money. So if things are not going well in terms of their investment decision, they stop and they go somewhere else. Whereas the larger firms, maybe they have more time, patience, more resources to work through an unfavorable investment climate. So in fact, when we do these projects, I manage 5 projects in 5 countries right now around the world, Cambodia, Ghana, India, Kenya, and Papua New Guinea. These are sustainable investment pilot projects to start to understand really what is, all the things that I talked about today come from these operational experience. And before this, I was at the World Bank IFC. So these comes from operational, not just theoretical, but operational. And then we convened the high-level private sector corporate actors to discuss these findings, operational findings, and validate them at a global level. So we have the country projects, and then we have the global conversations so that we bring the two together. But in these country-level projects, it's the SMEs that benefit the most from these measures, from these policies, from the support. So I think, to answer your question, often governments target support to them as well. In order
and
to
over the toolbox that you presented with standards, reporting on financing, incentives, facilitation services, assessment, etc. What works from the countries you are witnessing at the moment? What works the most to incentivize, to provoke changes, to provoke interest of companies? What do you think is the most efficient or the most immediate or easier framework to put in place?
Perfect. And maybe just one more point on the SMEs versus big companies to be very constructive and you know, practical. It is true that maybe companies at different sizes have different capacity to follow different standards and reporting. So often we like to recommend to the governments, maybe above a certain size, the company can have reporting requirements, but maybe below a certain size, maybe it's optional. So maybe you make it a nice to have, but not a hard requirement. So we have to realize that companies of different sizes have maybe different capacity, but we can use the same standards so that there's comparability, but maybe the requirement level might vary depending on capacity. I'm often asked, Emmanuel, what is the most important thing to facilitate investment? And from listening to many companies talk to me, and everybody in this call, I think, has the same experience or has heard these conversations, like, what is the one thing you can do to make an attractive business climate? And that can apply to green investment. And I think that's clear and stable regulation. What I hear, and Mr. Budra can maybe jump in, disagree, agree, add from his experience as the CEO of the Moroccan Trade Investment Agency. But I hear companies say to me, it doesn't really matter exactly what regulation you choose, but it has to be clear, predictable, stable, and we have to be able to understand it. We can't change it too quickly, and we have to be able to have a communication, a mechanism to understand what are you really thinking, and how can we communicate and understand things are changing. So there's a notice and comment, there's a dialogue mechanism, and if things are not going well or things are not clearly understood, there's a mechanism to talk and to adjust and to problem solve. So I think this is quite universal, and it can be applied to green. It's universal, but it can be applied to green because all of these tools can be, if you have a good tool, then you can apply it to a specific policy goal. So then you take this clear regulation, you say, let's make clear regulation, stable regulation, transparent regulation, problem-solving mechanisms applied to green projects, applied to green investors, focused on the green economy.
Okay. Feel free, Isham Boudra, if you want to jump in the discussion with Matthew, feel free to ask a question or comment.
I totally agree with Matthew. I think incentives are okay, but they come at the end of the process once the business case is built and the decision made, the investment decision is made, then they look at the incentives. But the most important thing is how can we operate in a safe and predictable environment. Investors do not like to have new regulations or new way of doing things every week or every month or every year. They need to have just a clear vision, and they need to have a clear forecast for their operations. That is the major tool that or KPI that is used to manage a company. And I totally agree with Matthew.
We know that there are several studies, many studies that testify that companies success better when they have responsible business conduct in regards to the environment, in regards to their territory, in regards to their staff. So in fact, you did not mention this in your presentation. The issue of performance, in fact, being sustainable, being responsible, is an incentive also to improve the performance of the company. And besides that, there is this the question of recognition. Keeping loyalty of the staff, keeping being in a peaceful environment with the population around the facilities of the companies. Is that something you are working on at the World Economic Forum, or this issue of recognition, promotion? Because there is not only the financial incentives and what the gains you can have, or the services, the facilitation, but I think this issue of reputation and promotion and recognition is something important as well. What do you think, Matthew, about that?
Thank you, Emmanuel. I have maybe 3 thoughts on that. The first is, sorry I didn't mention it. I think it's very exciting, these studies. I will just mention one by a Harvard Business School group. I think it's from September 2020 or October 2020, so pretty recent. Around then, I think the author is Chilam Fox or something like that. It's a group. Anyways, they looked at 3,000 companies during the pandemic, and they looked at the press reporting on the sustainability operations of these companies compared to other companies, and they found that the companies that operated more sustainably were more resilient, had a better return during the pandemic. And I think it's because the customer loyalty and the firms are more integrated in their societies. And so even when there are negative shocks, they're more resilient. But here's the data. This is a Harvard study of 3,000 companies. So I was very excited. It's pretty fresh, so it's really interesting. So that's one thing. The second point, so yes, I agree with you, Emmanuel. The second point, in terms of what we work on, one thing we really are excited about and what we work on at the World Economic Forum is the relationship between policy and finance. So if the government puts in place an attractive investment climate, good rules and regulations, it opens up the financial markets. And we see the sustainable finance is really growing. I think I saw some data from Morningstar just a few days ago. It's now 2 trillion. It used to be 1.2 trillion earmarked to ESG just in last October. So now from 1.2 to 2, it's growing. It keeps growing, even amidst difficult economic climate, because precisely at point 1, that's sustainable investments are more resilient and have better returns. And so what we want to do and what we hope to do working with partners, governments, firms, financial sector and so forth, you put in place the policies that attract the finance. But the other thing to think about, the flip side, is that if you know there's the finance, if you know there's $2 trillion looking to invest, then it's going to motivate the policies. So it's this circle like this. The policies can attract the finance, but the fact that the finance is there can motivate the policy reforms. So that's what we like to work on with governments and partners. That's kind of our approach in this space. And the third point about public recognition, Absolutely. I didn't mention it. It was another tool in the framework, but I didn't mention it. There are two things that we have been working with governments on doing in terms of public recognition. One is something called the recognized sustainable investor. So that is for a government to put in place a category of investor that makes a commitment to invest sustainably. And if they meet those criteria, and we can talk about the criteria in a second, if they meet those criteria, then they get more rewards, more incentives, and so forth. But they also get the public recognition, whether in a form of an award or public information. And a complementary way to that, if they're manufacturing goods, for example, you could put a stamp. I've been a big advocate. I don't know if you see when you buy water bottle, drinks or fruit, increasingly you see stamps, certified organic, certified fair trade. These people, consumers like this. This is helps them identify what are the products, the goods and services that align with their values. So I think this kind of sustainability markings could also be quite useful for the public recognition, and then the consumer can buy more of those goods and services. So we are very much working on the public recognition part of this piece.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Isham. Again, if you want to jump, feel free. One last thing about the EASY Alliance. We are very interested in the Mediterranean, be it the governmental agencies in charge of investment or business networks or local authorities. Yeah, to work on converging strategies, converging assessment frameworks, because obviously sustainable development has no frontier, and obviously if some countries are not part of the process, probably they may attract the least responsible investment, and that this could be a loss of opportunity for the neighbor country. So the more we are in an alliance like this, to promote joint practices and joint framework, is very important. How could you? What is the door opened to our countries and organizations to be part of such a process?
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. So I would say the EASY Alliance is still an idea. I'll just be very honest, it's an idea. It doesn't exist in practice. Okay. We're right now talking to many people, talking to governments, talking to companies, talking to the World Bank, the OECD, the UN, and they're all very excited about this. I mean, we have been working on these issues for a while. So this is a mechanism to bring together lots of key actors to push in the same direction. And we've done something similar before on trade. My team works on trade and investment. We've done something very similar on trade. We created a global alliance on trade facilitation. So we feel confident that something similar can be done on investment. I think the first step is in terms of how to support and participate, is there's this negotiation of an agreement at the WTO on investment facilitation for development. I think we'd like to conclude a high quality agreement. We're working to that, so we encourage all governments. There are 106 around that are currently participating in these negotiations. But make your voice heard, participate. Let's reach a high quality agreement quickly. But because this can be a tool. Once we have the agreement, then we can do the projects more easily, because the agreement gives the roadmap and resources and political commitment. So we take the agreement, and then we can go do projects. And then in terms of projects, we really need buy-in. The way we decide to do projects is several steps of buy-in. We need a government commitment, and we need private sector commitment, that both are going to commit to putting in resources in terms of time, and and to identify the challenges and work together. So it's that those kinds of specific projects will require commitment by actors. So where there's commitment, where there's interest, we can explore going further once the alliance is operational.
Okay, great. And this agreement with the WTO, what is specifically in it? What are you trying to achieve?
So it's called the Investment Facilitation for Development, and it's about what are good practices to facilitate investment, whether it's transparency, whether it's streamlining, whether it's coordination, whether it's one-stop shop, whether it's incentives, and so forth. So what are the best practices, the commitments to create more attractive investment climates that can facilitate more investment? So it's a commitment. It's a commitment by a government who sign, who would agree to these obligations. And then once that commitment is made, then the resources open up the technical assistance, the capacity building, the project resources to help implement the commitments that have been undertaken. So we're right now in the negotiation phase of this agreement. So it's very much live. We hope to reach a successful and a high quality agreement so they can improve investment flows.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us. And obviously we keep in touch because we're happy to have the contact now with you and to know about this initiatives you have in this domain. So let's keep in touch. Stay with us, and we now move to the next presentation from Isham Boudra. So Isham, we saw you a little bit. Hello again.
Hello.
Good morning.
Emmanuel.
Ouais. So you've been the acting CEO of the Agence Marocaine de Développement des Investissements for some years now. So you have a good background on investment promotion in Morocco. Obviously, Morocco is very advanced in this domain of sustainable development and green plans. I think that's what you are going to present in your video. So the same with Matthew. We will show your video. And then we have an exchange with you at the end of the video.
Okay, thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
Donc, je vous remercie pour m'avoir donné l'opportunité d'intervenir un peu sur la partie économique qui concerne mon pays, le Maroc. Et d'un point de vue surtout économie verte. Donc ça, c'est un sujet qui est très important et qui est aujourd'hui d'actualité plus que jamais. Et c'est vraiment l'occasion d'en parler. Pour cela, j'aimerais bien revenir un petit peu sur l'histoire ou la genèse des choses d'une manière très simple. Donc l'histoire a démarré il y a probablement une trentaine d'années, voilà à peu près, avec vision éclairée de sa majorité qui Hassan II est aujourd'hui depuis plus de 20 ans le roi Mohamed VI, que Dieu le glorifie, avec une vision sur les énergies renouvelables. Donc à l'époque, c'était une énergie qui était essentiellement développée par des pays très avancés avec des technologies assez avancées. Donc les gens ne comprenaient pas pourquoi le Maroc partait sur du luxe, une énergie de luxe, à une époque où les énergies fossiles, essentiellement le pétrole, étaient d'actualité et tout le monde en parlait. Il n'y avait pas d'énergie électrique, il n'y avait pas de véhicules électriques à l'époque. Donc c'était un petit peu hors sujet. Et grâce à cette vision éclairée et au fur et à mesure du temps, le Maroc a commencé à construire petit à petit un certain nombre d'éléments, de pièces de puzzle qui ont fait qu'aujourd'hui, et on arrivera en fin d'histoire à cela, le Maroc se positionne comme acteur d'énergie renouvelable. Les pièces de puzzle sont assez simples. Premièrement, cette vision. Deuxièmement, la construction autour de compétences, c'est-à-dire la mise en place d'organismes spécialisés dans ces créneaux. Et troisièmement, aller vers une stratégie claire qui touche tous les secteurs. Donc, on peut évoquer plusieurs, une stratégie autour de l'agriculture, une stratégie autour de la production des énergies à travers les barrages hydrauliques, l'énergie solaire, et puis l'éolien. Donc, il y a une vision très claire, des ressources mises à disposition, puis une stratégie pour développer une stratégie qui a été réfléchie par ces ressources, bien entendu avec la vision qui est bien définie. Donc la résultante est, on a eu un secteur agricole qui a changé complètement de cap en allant vers des productions en utilisant des énergies renouvelables, des productions propres Et donc avec un minimum d'utilisation, là pour aller vers le bio, un minimum d'utilisation de produits chimiques. Donc ça, c'était la partie embryonnaire et la partie qui a démarré tout au début de ces stratégies. Et par la suite, à travers l'agence qui s'appelle MAZEN, qui s'occupe du développement des énergies renouvelables au Maroc, il y a eu des objectifs qui ont été mis en place pour aller pratiquement jusqu'à la moitié de la production en mix énergétique, énergie renouvelable et énergie classique, de 50-50, à peu près 42-45% à horizon 2025 jusqu'à 2030. Donc, on est en train de réaliser ces objectifs-là et d'y aller progressivement. Vous allez probablement me dire, alors qu'est-ce que ça va changer si jamais vous produisez à 50% en énergie renouvelable? C'est le respect de l'environnement, c'est clair, ça c'est la résultante directe. Mais économiquement parlant, ça pourrait même au début revenir plus cher parce que le temps d'amortir les équipements, c'est des investissements capitalistiques, donc c'est assez complexe. Et bien la réponse aujourd'hui, on la trouve dans le changement économique à travers le monde. Déjà, l'Europe qui travaille sur la mise en place d'une taxe carbone. Et aujourd'hui, avec l'Asie qui monte en puissance en utilisant des véhicules électriques, donc il y a une nécessité de production d'énergie électrique, c'est-à-dire de l'électricité. Et troisièmement, il y a cette phase Covid, cette pandémie, qui a activé, qui a accéléré tous les processus qui vont vers tout ce qui est propre. Donc aujourd'hui, on a compris que le respect de l'environnement, la protection de l'environnement et la production d'énergie renouvelable est devenu primordial. Donc ce n'est plus une vision internationale ou mondiale, c'est devenu une réalité qui est mise en place. Économiquement parlant, et l'impact direct, ce sont les facteurs de production. C'est un impact direct, l'énergie est un facteur de production qui est assez déterminant dans n'importe quelle décision économique, que ce soit l'investissement, l'exportation, la production, le développement. Donc aujourd'hui, cette énergie-là nous permettra dans le futur d'atteindre des niveaux de coûts qui sont comparables à ce que probablement l'Asie offre aujourd'hui. Je m'explique. Si on applique une taxe carbone sur toute la phase de production et la phase logistique aussi d'un produit, c'est-à-dire le cycle global pour avoir un produit fini et le ramener jusqu'au consommateur final, on aura la possibilité, premièrement, positionnement géographique, pas très loin d'Europe, pas très loin de tous nos clients habituels, et aussi vers d'autres continents à travers un cheminement logistique qui est déjà mis en place. On aura cette possibilité de fabriquer localement vert et aussi bénéficier de la logistique qui est relativement très courte comparée à d'autres pays lointains, essentiellement l'Asie, qui permettra d'avoir un impact de cette taxe très limité. Et à ce moment-là, les choses vont s'inverser. Il y a deux éléments importants aujourd'hui qui viennent renforcer ce positionnement géographique déjà pour l'Afrique, pour le Maghreb par rapport à l'Europe, si on veut prendre que cet exemple-là de clients. La proximité, mais aussi la fabrication en énergie verte, ce qui mettra le coût de fabrication assez bas, avec un impact de taxe carbone très limité. Donc aujourd'hui, c'est devenu clairement primordial que d'aller vers cette énergie-là. Maintenant, vous pouvez me poser la question, qu'est-ce que le Maroc pourrait faire pour accélérer, pour aussi non seulement produire cette énergie verte, mais permettre à ces opérateurs de fonctionner dans ce système-là, dans ce nouveau système, parce que ce n'est pas simple de passer d'un système conventionnel électrique basé sur un mode de fonctionnement historiquement qui utilise des énergies probablement fossiles, aller vers du vert. Même si on le produit, il faut que les gens apprennent à le mettre en place et apprennent à utiliser aussi, optimiser au quotidien au niveau de leurs unités de production essentielles. Et bien là aussi, le Maroc a créé tous les outils, essentiellement une agence qu'on appelle l'ANE, une agence qui travaille sur l'efficacité énergétique et qui accompagne les industriels sur la partie mise en place de tous les outils, à savoir les panneaux solaires pour l'électricité au quotidien, tout ce qui est optimisation pour consommer moins d'électricité et produire aussi vert. Donc ça, c'est une orientation qui est très importante. L'AMDI, de son côté, l'Agence marocaine de développement des investissements et des exportations, œuvre dans le même sens, en ayant ça comme axe stratégique dans ces plans d'action, c'est de sensibiliser et travailler avec les fédérations sectorielles, automobiles, aéronautiques, textiles, pharma, donc tous les secteurs productifs, travailler avec eux de telle façon qu'ils commencent déjà à introduire cette notion au niveau des opérateurs. Bon, les grands opérateurs, il y a beaucoup moins de difficultés à introduire cette philosophie-là d'énergie verte. Mais pour les petites et moyennes entreprises qui sont des maillons des écosystèmes de grandes entreprises, il faut aussi qu'ils soient dans la même stratégie. Et bien avec les fédérations sectorielles, en Team Maroc, avec notre tutelle qui est le ministère de l'Industrie, du Commerce et de l'économie verte, on va ensemble vers la sensibilisation et la mise en place de tous les moyens pour réussir cette stratégie. Donc aujourd'hui, on est en train de relever ce challenge. On doit être au rendez-vous. J'espère que tous les pays partenaires et tous les pays de la région, et essentiellement au niveau de notre continent africain, que nous tous, on ira vers ces solutions-là qui vont non seulement permettre le respect ou la protection de l'environnement, qui est un objectif majeur à mon sens, mais aussi permettre d'avoir une base compétitive, complémentaire et qui offre un produit fini qui répond aux normes et aux exigences européennes ou celles qui sont imposées par d'autres continents en termes de qualité, en termes de respect d'environnement, en termes de délai de livraison, de coûts et in fine, et ça la pandémie nous l'a bien appris, le consommateur final a repris sa position de leader dans la décision économique, en quelque sorte. Donc aujourd'hui, tous les pays œuvrent pour qu'un consommateur final puisse avoir un produit fini complet, pas seulement à bas prix, mais qui respecte l'environnement aussi. Et tout le monde est sensible. Heureusement, le consommateur encore plus que le producteur lui-même. Tout le monde consomme et est sensible par rapport au respect de l'environnement et aussi tout en gardant la partie économique protégée. Donc voilà globalement ce que je voulais dire par rapport à la genèse de cette économie verte au niveau de notre pays, sous la vision et sous la supervision de Sa Majesté le Roi Mohamed VI, que Dieu le glorifie, et qui nous a permis aujourd'hui d'arriver en toute sincérité à ce positionnement très important, stratégique pour le pays et stratégique aussi pour la région et qui servira, espérons, le monde dans le bon sens et les partenaires économiques, essentiellement l'Europe, vraiment dans le sens qui va satisfaire le consommateur final. Voilà, je vous remercie pour cette intervention et je reste à votre disposition pour toute réponse aux questions ou toute clarification que je pourrais apporter. Merci.
Thank you very much, Hicham Boudra. It's very impressive, very interesting, this presentation. Before we move to the questions to you, there is a question in the chat for Matthew about chambers of commerce. How do you see chambers of commerce contributing to the stable environment, to the regulatory framework? Do you collaborate with chambers of commerce at the World Economic Forum to collect data? Could you say a word on this, or would you be ready to do so?
Thank you. And sorry, I didn't see the question in the chat. My apologies.
No, it's just arrived. Don't worry.
Oh, thanks. So yes, the short answer is yes, we do collaborate. We work very closely with the International Chamber of Commerce at the global level in many different ways. They attend our meetings, we attend their meetings. We actually, the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, so not the investment facilitation, but the precursor, is done jointly with the ICC. So we're partners in that, formal partners. And we work at a national level, also very closely with chambers. So in Cambodia, where I just launched a new database, we had all the chambers around the table last week because it was only useful if we worked with their members. So yeah, the short answer is we are very happy to work with chambers of commerce.
Okay, thank you. Hicham Boudra, so very impressive, even the objective, and it's true that you are close to the objective of 50% of renewable energy in Morocco. So it's also a huge inspiration for the northern neighboring country, because we are struggling in Europe to have this mix. About the technology and precisely the role of your agency in attracting possibly investment. How did Morocco develop this switch? Was it by inviting companies to develop technology or to develop projects in Morocco? Did you develop it with Moroccan companies? What was the endogenous and the external contribution to that?
The first step started by what we call in French barrage, énergie hydraulique.
Okay.
We can just dig, I think, in English. So this was the first creation of this strategy of renewable energies. But right after that, few years after that, we started with the solar energy. And this comes following a strategy that was set by the country. It was really before having any investor on that subject, because it was not economically viable at this time.
Mm-hmm.
It was expensive. The quantity of energy was low. Having it set in the network was also expensive. But the strategy was there. The agency in charge of developing the strategy has been created, and then they started finding the right operators for Noor, for example, which is the biggest solar station in the world. We had an international operator as a partner, and then they started developing this.
No, it's British, I think. Huh? It's
not British. It is
no?
Middle East.
Sorry. Okay. Okay.
But the management is international, British, Indian. You have different nations, but the concept was really interesting with new technologies. Some was under test at these times, and then we started moving, opening this strategy as international bids to other operators. When we had Siemens later that constructed the factory in the north of Morocco for what we call les éoliennes, the pales d'éoliennes. This was really the first steps that we had, like say, 15 years ago.
Okay, and in your roadmap right now at the agency, do you do specific targeting and promotions towards these sectors, these environmental sectors or these energy sectors, or?
We have an operating mode in the agency which facilitates the communication on that subject. Mm-hmm. We have conventions signed with different federations, sectorial federations, to have direct connections. Anytime we do promotion, we work with them on a daily basis with different directions, and the organization within the agency is set in that sense. So now we are using this network to talk to the federation and at the same time the companies. For example, yesterday we had the conference, a hybrid conference in the aerospace industry. So we had some operators and also all the actors and players, and we talked about this subject, and we said that it is important to move to the green energy. At the end of the session, all of them signed the chart saying that we have to go to renewable energy before 2022, 23.
Okay.
So, and we had the agency in charge of the Facilitation énergétique, Mazen, we had all the players. So this is the way we move. It has become part of the operating work we have with them on a daily basis.
With the other agencies to address the companies through their federations and
exactly.
Okay.
Not only the federation, but the most important thing are the companies and the industrial sites that are using energy.
Okay. Before we continue the question, we have to say goodbye to Matthew. I think you have to leave us. So thank you very much, Matthew, for being with us. See you soon. And yeah, goodbye. There is a question from the participant. Who participated to the financing of the Noor project, Isham?
If you talk about the energy project, the big ones like Noor, those are private companies. They come to Morocco, they answer to the bid, and they make an agreement with the local distribution company, which is public, ONI, and then they distribute the electricity based on an arrangement. So the system is transparent and it is done under international bids. Now, when it comes to companies that will use this energy or that needs to set some equipment within the organization, we have incentives for that. We have those agencies that are bringing one agency in charge of the small and medium-sized companies that will bring some finances program those small companies or medium-sized companies to upgrade their systems. Okay. So I don't know if this answers the question.
But I suppose its idea was to have, if there were foreign contribution and as well as a public contribution in Noor, is there a public co-financing in the Noor project, or it's fully private foreign investors?
It's fully private.
Fully private. Okay.
Yeah, it is done under international bids. We have programs with different international organizations to encourage this energy, but this is done towards the companies. But the ones that will start producing and selling this energy, those are private companies that work. You have, for example, I talked about Siemens is one of the international companies that are operating, and we have new ones that are also planning to produce local energy and exporting it to Europe.
You mentioned the competitiveness. You said that thanks to your proximity to Europe, to Africa, which are your European market being your first market, you can shorten the value chains and the logistics, and then this will allow you maybe to introduce carbon taxes. That's what I understood from you. Is it already running, this carbon tax, or it's a project you have in?
No, it's Europe that is setting the carbon tax.
Okay.
We don't have the details right now, but it's a project that is discussed. So by 2023, we will have this carbon tax set. It is, but we need to prepare ourselves today, not only for this carbon tax, but also for respecting the environment. For me, this is much more important because it's the goal and the objective for the whole nations around the world.
You talk mainly about energy. Is there any company strategies relating to the waste sector or the circular economy? Is it something that you see happening in Morocco? Yeah.
Much more. The model of Morocco, we have 12 regions. The first time we have difficulties setting those circular energies because those regions are independent in terms of daily management of their waste and their daily life. But now we are concentrating this in order to have some critical quantities to transform them. But at least within each region, the recycling is set. All the companies that are managing the waste are introducing the latest technologies in their recycling the products, the plastics, and setting, for example, combustible for other industries. So all those, but still, those are not carbon free. We need really to move to better types of waste management.
Okay. Okay. Is there any question again from the floor to Hicham Boudra? If you want to raise your question before we close this first part. No. Well, thank you very much. Then Hicham, very interesting and very impressive. You stay with us anyway, especially on the financing. You will be part of the debate, so you can continue to react and explain what's happening in Morocco. But definitely very interesting. Let's move to the continuation of the webinar. Merci beaucoup, Hicham.
Merci, Emmanuel.
Just before we move to the debate, just to give you a few vision on the next webinar to come. On the 1st of July, we'll be having a webinar under the EPSOMED project on promoting gender equality through investors and enterprise. Very cross-cutting topic as well. On the 22nd of July, we have, which is a bit related to the topic today and with what we have been discussing with Matthew Stephenson, a webinar on assessing and monitoring the impact of companies on the territories. And in September, we'll be back on this topic of green economy with a new webinar on attracting investment in the green economy, and we will showcase more strategies, more examples of countries and agencies experience and strategies. So save the date for these three dates. I remind you that you can access to the replay of our webinars either on the ANIMA website, we show the good practice section, either on our YouTube channel.